Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. 8 months ago, within weeks of entering office, Governor Pritzker announced the creation of the Pension Consolidation Feasibility Task Force to address one of the greatest challenges of Illinois' financial future, our unsustainable pensions, and the accompanying taxpayer burdens it creates. This task force has done what so many have thought was impossible, and I'm so proud to join Governor Pritzker in today's announcement of the first major recommendation for a statewide pension system that puts the needs of retirees and taxpayers first. Thanks to the insight and contributions of municipalities, labor unions, former elected officials, and financial experts, today's announcement marks the first step in redesigning a secure future for our retirees, our taxpayers, and our state. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Governor JB Pritzker.
Thank you very much to Lieutenant Governor Stratton for her tremendous work in Springfield and her partnership in governance. I want to begin this afternoon by recognizing and thanking the members of the Illinois Pension Consolidation Feasibility Task Force. I want to thank them for their willingness to work together to build consensus on this issue, which, if adopted by the General Assembly, would be a momentous achievement in the history of our state. When they started this work, there were many naysayers, but they came to the table determined to address a problem that is bedeviling our cities and our towns all across Illinois. I want to offer particular gratitude to the task force's co-chairs, to Bill Brodsky, who has led some of our state's largest and most high-profile financial institutions, Pat Devaney, the president of the Associated Firefighters of Illinois, and former Senate Republican leader Christine Radonio. I also want to thank Brad Cole from the Illinois Municipal League for his diligent dedication to being a conduit for local governments. You all brought together representatives from municipalities, from labor unions, former elected officials, and financial experts, and you arrived at a solution. That, in and of itself, is truly monumental progress. Since I took office in January, my administration has operated with a fierce dedication to improving our state's fiscal health and growing our economy after years of neglect. We're building an Illinois that's more attractive for job creation and lifts up the families of our state. We've made huge strides forward so far, but the tasks that remain, one of the most critical long-term fiscal challenges, is the need to address unfunded pension liabilities for local governments and the surging property tax burdens that they create. The facts of the matter are clear. Illinois has over 660 individual pension systems. That's the second highest number of pension systems among the 50 states. 649 of Illinois' systems are individual and independent suburban and downstate pension plans for our police officers and our firefighters. That means 649 portfolio management systems, 649 sets of management fees and duplicative administrative costs, which collectively means these funds produce substantially lower investment returns than they could if they pooled their resources. Larger pools of assets, like the IMRF, the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, produce much higher returns because they have a wide array of investment options and they pay lower fees. The current system of investing 649 small funds is failing, and taxpayers are paying a high price. Under the current arrangement, Illinois' suburban and downstate police and firefighter pension funds are underperforming by nearly $1 million a day. As it stands, as compared to the statewide municipal retirement fund, these 649 small local pension funds collectively generated 2 percentage points lower investment returns on average every year over the past 10 years. That's 2% compounding on nearly $15 billion of assets. That's not just a missed opportunity. That's a hole that these funds are digging deeper every year. And then municipalities have to ask taxpayers to fill the hole. There's an old Will Rogers line that says that if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you want to do is stop digging. Firefighters and police pension funds are foregoing nearly $1 million a day that could be securing their financial futures. Taxpayers are having to come up with nearly $1 million a day to make up for the underperformance of their local pension plans. It doesn't have to be this way. So today, my task force has delivered its initial recommendations for addressing these plans' unfunded liabilities. Based upon those recommendations, we'll be proposing legislation this fall to consolidate the assets of the 649 suburban and downstate pension funds into 2 statewide funds, one for fire employees and one for police employees. By pooling their investment dollars, the individual plans will improve their funding levels and reduce their net liabilities. Under the consolidated model, if the suburban and downstate police and fire funds perform as well as other existing larger pools of assets, they would earn an additional $820 million to $2.5 billion over just the next 5 years alone. And they would earn billions more over the next 20 years. This consolidation will improve the financial health of the plans and help secure the future of the retired workers who rely upon them. And it will alleviate some of the property tax burden that's plaguing homeowners and renters all across our state. For years, Illinoisans have watched their leaders bicker and battle over the prospect of pension consolidation. And for years, what little reform came into fruition was eventually thwarted by the money managers, by the luxury out-of-state conferences, the throngs of lobbyists who profit off of taxpayers, and it's the taxpayers who are forced to pick up the tab. Our task force kept the special interests out of the room, and they went to work bringing the principal parties together to hammer out their differences and find areas of agreement that actually work efficiently and effectively for the retirees and for the taxpayers. We know the entrenched financial interests who profit off the current system will attempt to derail this process. But we intend to do what's best for the taxpayers and for the retirees and to live up to our obligations to retirees. When I took the oath of office to be governor of this great state, I promised you a commitment to responsible and sustainable fiscal management, a vision that places kindness and courage above ideology and the status quo. Taking this action this fall is an important step in fulfilling that promise and toward building a future for Illinois that works for everyone. And now I'd like to invite one of our co-chairs, Bill Brodsky, to speak further about the work of the task force. Bill?
Thank you, Governor. First, I want to congratulate the governor for recognizing the need to deal with the pension problem and appointing this task force during the very first weeks of his administration. I also want to thank my co-chairs, Christine Radonio and Patrick Devaney, and the entire task force for their hard work and the way we work together in such a collegial manner. And I want to make special thanks to Deputy Governor Dan Hines and his deputy Cameron Mock, without whom we could not have produced this report. The fact that there are 649 downstate and suburban pension and police and fire funds cries out for reform. Decades of underperformance, high administrative expenses, and duplication demand change. The status quo is both unacceptable and unsustainable. The investment business, of which I've spent my entire career, is undergoing a massive change. In no place is it more evident than in the field of investment management. These changes are a result of advances in automation and magnified by the competition and efficiencies based on the scale of the funds under management. The cost savings are dramatic and a function of the amount of funds that are being managed. The goal of the task force is to maximize the return of the assets under management for the benefit of the first responders and their families, and to minimize the costs of those who fund these pension plans, the taxpayers of Illinois. The recommendations that we will share with you today were not easily arrived at, but represent a balanced approach based on thoughtful discussion and compromise among the various interested parties. While there's more to do, we strongly believe that these recommendations are significant steps in improving the performance and hence the funding of these 649 separate pension funds. It's now my pleasure to introduce my co-chair, Patrick Devaney, who's president of the Associated Firefighters of Illinois, and to whom we owe a great deal of gratitude for his leadership.
Good afternoon. First, I too would like to thank Governor Pritzker for the work he's doing to address the challenges that exist in some of our pension funds across the state, while protecting the retirement security of workers, including professional firefighters in Illinois. I also offer my sincere gratitude to the members of this task force. Everyone on the committee offered a unique perspective to this process, but the entire group worked towards a common goal to produce this report. The common sense recommendations we develop will go a long way to improve the funding levels of firefighter pension plans across the state and relieve the burden on property taxpayers without reducing the retirement security for firefighters. It will also help to ensure precious resources are not diverted from essential services and jeopardize the ability of our members to respond to emergencies as they do each and every day across our state. This AFFI is committed to continuing our work with the governor and this task force to advance these recommendations and then to address the additional challenges that exist in state and local pensions in Illinois. And now it's my pleasure to introduce another co-chair, former Senate Minority Leader, Christine Radogno.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back. First of all, I want to thank Governor Pritzker for offering me the opportunity to participate in this process. And the process, as has been alluded to, was a good one. It was inclusive. It was thorough. We've been meeting regularly since last spring. We've reviewed a lot of data, a lot of what other states do. So in no way is this a rushed recommendation by any means. The recommendations contained in this report do three critical things. They take some of the burden that taxpayers have to bear off of the taxpayers, not necessarily resulting in reductions, but it's critical to know if we don't do this, taxpayers will be asked to pay more. There is no question about that. This is good for the participants in the system. It's good for the state as a whole. And the process that we've developed in coming to this particular recommendation, which, as again has been stated, is probably not the full ball of wax, lays a great foundation for the additional work that needs to come to continue to solve problems that are still evident within our pension systems. So while there's more work to be done, I will wholeheartedly recommend to my former colleagues that they pass this legislation in the veto session so we can immediately begin to reap the benefits of close to $1 million a day for the taxpayers. So again, with that, I would like to thank the governor and introduce Brad Cole, who's the executive director of the Illinois Municipal League.
Thank you, Senator, and Governor Pritzker. Thanks also to all the individuals and organizations who are here today and were represented as part of this process. Public safety pension fund reform and consolidation has been an issue the Illinois Municipal League has held as a priority for the greater part of the last decade. I'm joined here today by North Chicago Mayor Leon Rockingham Jr., President of the Illinois Municipal League, and Barrington Mayor Karen Darch, past president of the Illinois Municipal League. This report, released today by this task force, shows the positive work that can be done in partnership toward a common goal, the goal being to stabilize and sustain local pension funds for the benefit of active employees, retirees, and taxpayers. And this is a win-win-win situation for all of them. Beyond just complimentary words, we truly and equally commend organized labor and local elected officials, and especially the governor, for this significant first step forward in addressing a very complicated issue with a common sense solution. Much work remains with the General Assembly and then hopefully in implementing the legislation, and the Illinois Municipal League is committed to helping get that work done. I'm pleased to introduce as the next speaker, our State Treasurer, Michael Frerichs.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here today. As the state's chief banker and chief investment officer, I know the benefits of pooling municipals' money to help get better returns and to contain costs. We run a program called Illinois Funds that helps invest municipalities' money in a way that reduces their investment costs, but also gets them access to better returns. Because we oversee about $6 billion in Illinois funds, we're able to invest in vehicles that these municipalities may not be able to themselves. We use our size as leverage to get greater returns. And since we've come into office, we have increased investment returns manyfold. With our Illinois funds, the funds that belong to the state of Illinois, we've increased our investment returns sixfold since coming into office. Because we know that every dollar we can help raise in interest is a dollar that doesn't have to be raised in taxes or a dollar that doesn't have to be made in cuts. The more dollars we can make for these pension systems helps to stabilize them and provide long-term retirement security for the thousands of men and women who rely upon this. Now, I also know one of the things you can do with size, economy of scale, is you have leverage to reduce costs. I serve on the Illinois State Board of Investment, where we came in and we have made changes with the times to reduce fees that are paid, to be into lower fee investment vehicles and work with different investment managers. And I'm very excited to work on this, hopefully new board, to bring in more money and to cut costs, something that all of us here in government should be working to do. And I want to applaud the governor for his leadership on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you very much. So happy to take any questions from members of the media.
Governor, the report correctly points out that there's money to be made by pooling investments. It also points out that there's money to be saved by consolidating administrative functions, operations of funds, but the report stops short of that. Could somebody please explain why you didn't recommend that too?
Sorry, recommend administrative cost? Actually, that will, not just the returns. Yeah. Actually, I do think there's maybe not adequate for you, but mention of the savings that will come, the cost savings that come from pooling. In other words, the administration of the investments that are made.
But the report also says that there's tens of millions of dollars to be saved by consolidating administration of the funds, not just the investment.
I think there's discussion about benefits consolidation. Yeah, that is, as you know, there are multiple phases and focus areas of this task force. That is certainly one that the task force continues to discuss. We also want to talk about what we're going to do at the state level with the multiple state funds and whether there are opportunities for cost savings there and changes, and we know that there are. But right now, these were the things that we were able to get done immediately. As I said, every day that goes by, these funds are losing up to $1 million a day in investment returns, as well as the costs of administering 649 of those suburban downstate pension funds.
Governor, I think the Illinois Policy Institute estimates that in order for Chicago to solve its roughly $70 billion unfunded pensions, that's CPS and City of Chicago, they would need for the next 20 years about something like 12% rate of return. I think they're currently at 4.5%. What is it you think with this new approach, this consolidated approach, what would be the targeted realistic rate of return to get over the next 20 years?
Well, as you know, this consolidation that's occurring that we're talking about today has to do with the downstate and suburban fire and police pensions. The subject of Chicago pensions as well as the statewide pensions will be taken up by the task force going forward. But we have 649 funds that are going to become 2. That's a momentous change. And because it increases returns by nearly 2%, we can make a significant dent in the underfunded liabilities that exist in those funds.
Notably absent voice today is from the police side of this equation. I know there was a member of the FOP Labor Council on the task force, but they didn't agree with some of the recommendations. How can you get this passed in the fall veto session without the full support of the police union?
Well, we certainly hope that they will chime in. This will become legislation that will be discussed and debated, that there will be hearings about, no doubt. But it was important to us to make sure that we had this legislation pushed forward in the veto session. And I think, as you saw, they have some differences on some individual issues. But we really believe that collectively we'll be able to get this through. It'll be good for the retirees, good for the people who are working today as first responders, and of course good for the municipalities, most importantly for the taxpayers of the state too. And so I'm hopeful that the police will join in as we move forward here.
The report strongly suggests down in the files of the thing that the 2011 Tier 2 standards, the bifurcated pension system we now have violates federal law because it offers enhanced benefits. I have a two-part question. One, do you believe that the current law about pensions, the two-tier system, does indeed violate federal law? And if so, how much is it going to cost to heal that problem, not just in these funds, but in all the funds that are affected?
Well, I maybe will turn it over to somebody on the task force to talk about these particular funds, although I would point out that there's, I think, $75 to $95 million of a fix that actually fixes the Tier 2 challenge that exists in these fire and police pensions that's in this package. We, of course, have the same challenge across other pension systems in the state, and that'll have to be addressed at some point. But again, this is a phased approach. This is a very important deliverable. This task force has come forward with a very important change to the way we do business with regard to pensions that will significantly improve the funding of the pension systems.
Cost to address those problems at some point?
Again, I think the task force is going to bring the experts in as they did with regard to the $15 billion of police and fire pensions, and they'll be examining that. What's that?
Because those are much bigger funds.
They are bigger funds, and we'll need to address those as we go.
Governor, the Illinois Public
Yeah.
Pension Fund Association, they said first they didn't get a seat at the table at the fund managers themselves here, but also they warned that by pooling all these resources together, it could create a temptation down the road for perhaps you or some next governor in the future to do what we've seen done to teachers' pension fund, which is to not make a contribution to raise those funds for some other budget. That's their sort of word of caution. How do you give any assurance to the public or to the legislators that would have to vote on this that won't happen?
Well, remember who you're talking to. These are the folks who run the junkets that just recently, the recent one cost about $8 million to the taxpayers to send people to Lake Geneva on a retreat. I realize that this is going to disrupt their business model, but frankly, we have to do what's best for the taxpayers of the state. And that's why this task force, made sure that the special interests weren't in the room and that the people who were directly affected, the retirees, the first responders themselves, and the municipalities were in the room, as well as financial experts, to make sure that they were getting the right plan put forward. I realize there are going to be headwinds, people who don't like this, people who benefit from it, the system that's so inefficient and bad for taxpayers, but we're going to have to overcome that in the veto session.
A recent report by the Department of Insurance which does some of the actuarial calculations for some of the municipality funds, it suggested that maybe a lot of the problem is that the $5,000 threshold that we have in state statute, that you have to have a municipal pension fund if you have 5,000 or more people in your town, is part of the problem, because they suggested, one, to raise that threshold to 30,000, and then also to make it easier to dissolve pension funds when the town drops below 5,000. Do you think it's the problem of, like, we've just promised too much for so long that each, even if you live in a very small town, like, you should get have a pension fund?
Well, there's a broad recognition that we need to do better with our pension funds across the state. There's no doubt, and that's why this consolidation is critically important. This does move us drastically forward, importantly for the health of these funds. There may be other proposals for making changes in the way we manage pension funds across the state or authorize pension funds, but this plan is a dramatic step forward. And I'm thrilled. I mean, how many years has it been? I think someone on the task force told me that for the last 75 years, there have been reports about attempting to consolidate the various pension funds across the state, these fire and police pension funds. There have been reports and more reports and more reports, and nothing was done about it. I really believe now is the time. I believe that there's a real impetus in the legislature to get something done, and I'm looking forward to getting it done in the veto session.
Are you calling on the legislature to pass this to your desk in this veto session? And do you really think there's enough time for them in the legislature to all digest this issue and pass it in those 2 weeks?
I do. I think it's a fairly straightforward plan that's being put forward, and of course we've talked to a number of legislators to make sure that they understand on both sides of the aisle, to make sure that they understand what is going to be proposed, or at least the general outline of what's being proposed. And as you saw, we had a bipartisan group here on the task force to make sure that we were having all the voices heard from in the process. So I feel good about the prospects in the veto session. Thank you. Well, let me just take that, if I may. It's important for us to move forward on all of these fronts. As you know, we have challenges at the state level. There are challenges for municipalities, and of course, the ones that we are dealing with today. But it's very important for us to move forward, to keep the momentum going on these important tasks. So that's why we're addressing this today. There will be more work done going forward. There's no doubt about it. It took 8 months for this group, to put forward their plan. It takes time. You've got to bring all the stakeholders to the table. And I know that's something that will be important to think about for the city of Chicago as well as for the state. Thank you very much. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.